Welcome to Tiger Talks, Legendary Faculty Edition. My name is Rosemary Allen, and I'm the Provost and Dean of the College here at Georgetown. And I've had the pleasure of working at Georgetown for more than 35 years and have had great opportunities to work with every single one of the members of this panel. 3 of them were actually members of the faculty when I arrived here back in, hard to believe, 1984. So it's so good to have all of you here, and I'm going to take a moment here to read a little bit of a biographical background on each one of you. I'm going to start with Dr. Lindsey Apple. Dr. Lindsey Apple is from Crestwood, Kentucky. He's a graduate of Georgetown College and completed his master's in history at UK and his PhD in history at the University of South Carolina. He taught in the history department from 1966 to 67, and then from 1970 to 2004. He served as department chair from 1989 to 2004, and was also instrumental in building the success of our relationship with Regent's Park College of Oxford University. Dr. John Blackburn is originally from Barberville, Kentucky. When he was 13, he and his family moved to New Wilmington, Pennsylvania, and he attended Westminster College, receiving his BS in chemistry. He then went on to get his PhD in chemistry from Vanderbilt University. Dr. Blackburn taught chemistry at Georgetown from 1972 until his retirement in 2001. He presently serves on the Georgetown College Board of Trustees and has done so since 2013. Dr. Blackburn and his wife, Patricia, have 2 children, Jennifer and Melissa, who are also graduates of Georgetown, and they have 2 grandchildren, Kyra and Melissa. Next is Dr. Kristen Zarnicki. Kristen is originally from South Bend, Indiana. She earned her BA from the University of Notre Dame, her master's from Northwestern University, and her PhD from the University of Cincinnati. She's an English professor at Georgetown College, and she's actually also the author of a recently published memoir, The First Christian. You can see it over my shoulder here. Dr. Susan Dummer is next. She grew up in Millville, New Jersey, but came to Georgetown in 2006 after living in Texas for over a decade. Her bachelor's degree is from Sam Houston State University, and her master's and PhD are from Texas A&M. She is an associate professor and chair of the Department of Communication and Media Studies. Her husband, James, is a special education teacher at Great Crossing High School, and he has also coached both football and archery here at Georgetown. Her son, Tyler, graduated from Georgetown College in December, and her daughter, Josie, is a junior at Great Crossing High School. Dr. Mark Johnson is next. He is a professor emeritus of biology at Georgetown College, and his hometown was Denver, Colorado. Dr. Johnson attended Colorado State University and received his BS in plant pathology, Phi Beta Kappa. He received his PhD from the University of Kentucky, where he also studied plant pathology. He was a professor at Georgetown from 1985 until 2018, which is 33 years. He taught microbiology, Bio 311 for those of you on the inside, almost every semester. He also taught immunology, cell and molecular biology, and seminar classes. And of course, he was the program coordinator for the Georgetown College dual degree nursing program at the University of Kentucky. He also served a 4-year term as chair of the biology department. Next is Dr. Guis Silva. Dr. Silva is an associate professor in political science and currently the chair of the political science department. A former attorney and originally from Brazil, he received his PhD in international relations from the University of Southern California. Dr. Silva's area of interest includes global studies, visual studies, and cognitive modeling. He and his wife, Sandra, have been married for 26 years. Though they don't have any children, they do have a lovely, energetic Swiss Mountain Australian Shepherd mix that they call Lucy. Next is Dr. Macy Wyatt. Dr. Macy Wyatt was born to Lebanese parents in East Tennessee, but moved to Lebanon at age 11. She attended and graduated from a British high school in Beirut, receiving a BA in psychology from the American University in Beirut, and a master's and PhD in counseling psychology from the University of Kentucky. Dr. Wyatt worked as a counseling psychologist at a school for disturbed boys in Michigan and at the Child Guidance Clinic in Lexington, before she started teaching in Georgetown College in 1961. She took early retirement from teaching in 1998 due to a family illness. But at that time, she started the Counseling Center at Georgetown College and stayed on for 10 years on a part-time basis as its supervisor. So welcome to all of you, our Tiger Talk panel, and thank you for your willingness to be here with us. I'm going to begin by asking just a basic question to all of you, because 2020 has been a very challenging year. And I want to know, how have you been doing? I'm going to start with our current faculty because I know you've been going through an awful lot to adapt over the past 12 months. So I'm going to start, I think, with Kristen Zarnicki. Would you be willing to tell us what it's been like to be suffering through 2020-21?
Sure. Challenging, absolutely. I might be a little better off than some people because more than anything in the world, I like to hole up and read and write. And staying at home has given me opportunity to do all of that. But I miss being with people. I miss being with students. So, you know, trying to get together with people on Zoom, sit outside with people during nice weather, and just take it day by day. I know that's not the most original of answers, but that's all we can really do. We don't know what's going to happen from day to day or week to week or month to month. So my husband and I have just been focusing on doing the best we can, taking it day by day, get some exercise, get some fresh air, and just try to stay positive.
Guy, how's it been for you?
It has been challenging in more ways than one. For me, one particular issue has been not being able to travel to Brazil to visit my family. It has also been a challenge in terms of the classes, but it's also has been an opportunity for us to learn new things, new strategies, new tools. And I feel very fortunate that I live in Lexington and there are a lot of open spaces here. So I go almost every day to the trails with my dog Lucy, and that's good for the mind and for the soul and for the body. And yes, I do miss being on campus with our students, with our colleagues. Also, I think it's quite important. It's a crucial part of Georgetown College, to me at least. And but it's take one day at a time. We're getting there. We're getting there.
Susan?
I was fortunate enough that last spring I was on sabbatical. So I did not have to do the big lift of transitioning everything within 2 weeks onto Zoom and online. But that meant that I was a little behind the curve when I came back in the fall, as far as trying to figure out how to put much of my work into an electronic format. More than anything, I am just so thankful to have the opportunity to be back in the classroom with our students. The college has just done an amazing job of trying to make sure that everyone stays safe. And our freshman class, I have to say, I have been very impressed with them. I think more than anything, we're just tired of losing things. So they're so thankful to be in the classroom and have the chance for face-to-face learning, that they're inspiring to me because they're working much harder than I think I've seen a lot of students in the past few years. So I'm okay. I'm good. So thanks for asking.
Now, I know for those of you who are retired, you haven't had to do the switch of the classroom, but I'm sure it's still been a bit of a struggle trying to figure out how to deal with 2020-21 and all the perils of Zoom. So Macy, I'll start with you.
It's been interesting and it's been kind of challenging because we need stimulation and it's been hard to get it. We do it some on Zoom. When the library was open, I would use the library and I'm a volunteer there. And I'm also with the museum, and that's interesting with the projects they're doing. And I've done a lot of reading and I've done some writing. So it hasn't been a total waste of my time. You know, I try to stay productive. And if, when the library was closed, I was thinking I was going to have to start reading reference books of my husband, which was not my ideal situation, but it has expanded my reading, and that's good.
Lindsay?
First of all, my respect goes out to those who are teaching or trying to teach and deal with this. I can't imagine the difficulties and the problems that arise in trying to relate to students in a time like this. I guess I've been retired longer than I like to admit. It's been something like 16 years now, I think, or 17. But so I got out before the big technology push. I've been staying home a lot. It's, you know, I've told people that for the first time in my life, I feel vulnerable. I'm old enough to be in that group that's pretty restricted by the virus. So I've stayed home a lot. I have my friend actually is working remotely, and she works from my home. So at least I haven't had to be away. When I really want to talk to somebody, there's somebody there to talk to. The rest of the time I read. I've given up writing, I think. It's too stressful, but you know, just basically reading, and you know, I play a little golf, and I plan to fish come spring, and that sort of thing. But I'll just be glad when it's over and I can go to a nice restaurant and sit down and have a good meal.
Everybody's nodding at the restaurant thing. I think we're all a little bit ready for that. Mark, I'll go to you next.
Well, I agree with Lindsay. I want to commend all the current faculty, especially in departments with labs. They have things that are more challenging to deal with. But as for my wife and myself, we've been just staying home. I'll be anxious to get my vaccine in hopefully a week or two, and then visit campus. I'd like to go visit faculty and former students on campus. So looking forward to that.
John. You're gonna have to unmute yourself. John. John?
There we go. I said, I'm like the last two. If I hadn't already retired, the start of this last year would have been a great time, and I'd have probably been gone because like Lindsay said, technology has kind of left me behind in some of these things, and I don't even know how I'd post my assignments at this point. But Pat and I have been very lucky. We haven't had any illnesses or anything. Both of my daughter's families have been very diligent about being very careful in quarantining themselves. So we've been able to visit them, one in Atlanta and one in Northern Kentucky, and had the opportunity to watch my 7-year-old grandkids grow into 8-year-old grandkids, which has been a treat. But I've probably spent a lot less time outside this last year than ever before. I read some more, watch some Netflix. We've got, I think, 3 series on Netflix that Pat and I haven't finished. So it's been fun. But the other thing I've had a chance to do with some of my time is I have spent some time on the computer with email, tracking down former students and re-engaging with them. And that's been a lot of fun to find out where they are and what they're doing. And I would urge folks to do that because it's a real treat when you get a chance to do that.
Okay, we've had a chance to kind of look at the present moment. Now let's take a moment and kind of look back. I'm going to ask 2 questions together. And that is, first, what led you into higher education? And more specifically then, what led you to Georgetown College? So what led you into higher education as a profession? And then what led you to Georgetown College specifically? And for this, I think I will start with Guy.
All right. So I used to be an attorney in Brazil. And then I went back to school. I went back to get a master's degree in history, actually, but with an area of concentration in international relations. And at that time, I was working as an attorney during the day. And then in the evening, I ended up being hired to be the director of an undergraduate program in international relations. And that experience of being in the administration, but also teaching, really caught my interest. And then from there, I made a decision of pursuing my PhD And that's when I came to the United States. I went to USC. And then after I finished USC, I got a position as a visiting professor at Northern Illinois University. And after that, I went to the market and I saw an opening from Georgetown College. And I am someone who lived in big cities. I am from Rio de Janeiro. I lived in Cape Town, South Africa. I lived in Paris, France. I lived in Los Angeles. And I was ready to, go in a different route. And so I came to visit Georgetown College, and I was absolutely in love with the city, with the college. Then my wife came and visited the college and the city, and we loved here, and we stayed. And that's how we end up being here.
Cool. Well, that's one end of the spectrum. Lindsay, you were a graduate of Georgetown, so could you give us your perspective on how it worked for you?
I think the most important thing were my professors, Dr. Carl Fields, Horace Hambrick, Jim Heiser, people who cared about students and encouraged us. I think too often, particularly in Kentucky and southern states, I suppose, there's a kind of intellectual timidity. And it really helps when faculty encourage the students and make them think, they can handle it too. And they did that for me. And then I went away to graduate school and to teach for a while at Winthrop College, which is now Winthrop University. But Dr. Hambrick brought me back twice to teach. I suppose at that point in my life, that was more flattering than the thought of a higher salary. But so I came back and have not left. But I like the small college atmosphere. I like the interaction with students. As John said, getting back in touch with students, having students call to see if you're all right, in many instances. But just the kind of learning environment that's here. And I think the Oxford program really illustrates that. Our kids go and they can compete at the highest level. Sometimes they don't know it until they get there, but they can compete. And it's fun to see that opening up that occurs.
Susan, I'll let you go next.
Well, I was a distracted undergraduate. I was that student that was smart, but had lots of other things to pay attention to. And so I didn't always necessarily live up to my potential. And I found myself 21 years old. I had been bouncing around from major to major to major. I had taken a year and a half off. I went back to school and I was pregnant and getting married, and I changed my major to communication because it was the easiest way for me to finish my degree. And I had faculty members that stopped saying, "You have so much potential," and instead helped me to achieve my potential. And I started studying things that I was passionate about, and I had some direction. And I went home and told my husband, "I think that I'm going to go to grad school." And he was like, "I thought you were trying to graduate as quickly as possible." I was like, "Yeah, I changed my mind." So when I went into my graduate program, I knew that I wanted to be a teacher, not necessarily a researcher. And my intent had always been to look for programs where I was going to be able to make a difference in the lives of students the way that my faculty did with me. And my interview for Georgetown was actually in Boston at the National Communication Association convention. And I had dinner with Dr. Nix and Dr. Hall, and it felt like dinner with old friends. And when I came to campus, Dr. Hall drove me down Memorial Drive, and I got tears in my eyes because I just thought, this is where I'm supposed to be. So that's how I ended up here.
John, I'll let you go next.
Well, my dad was the director of the physical plant at two different colleges during his career, first at Union College in Barberville, which is why I lived in Barberville, till I was 13, and then at Westminster College in Pennsylvania, where he eventually retired from. And our houses were literally on the college campus. So I grew up on a small private liberal arts campus basically until I graduated from college. And I got to know students. I got to know the facilities. I grew up in the maintenance building was my playground when I was young. And I learned so much from those people, good people. I don't know how many of you saw The Queen's Gambit. Anybody seen that?
Yes.
That was me. I was taught to play chess when I was in the 8th grade by one of my dad's maintenance workers. And there's a long story behind that would take too much time, but it was just a really good place to be. And I went to graduate school after I graduated with the intent of teaching at a small college in Kentucky or Tennessee. Now that's pretty narrow range. And when I graduated, I think literally, I promise you, there were 4 nationally advertised jobs in chemistry at all. Because that was 1972 and 1971, and there was a lot of reasons why they didn't advertise, but it was terrible. The only place I sent resumes were to small colleges in Kentucky and Tennessee, and Georgetown offered me a job. So that's why I'm here. I came here without any intent to stay for 2 years or 5 years or look to get into something else. I said, I'll just take it as it comes. And I always liked it. It was a great place to raise my kids. Wonderful environment with people and students. And I've never looked back or regretted it. So.
Kristen, I know that you had some similarities in your background with John.
Yes, absolutely. So my dad was a professor at the University of Notre Dame, where I went for undergrad, and we grew up, our house was 4 blocks from campus. So Notre Dame campus was our playground growing up. We'd put on roller skates and just go all over the place. We'd roller skate through the buildings. We'd peek around in the dorms. We'd go get a burger in the student center, my friends and I, in 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th grade. So it was always a comfortable environment. It was home. So I've always been very comfortable in sort of academic settings and things like that. I had 4 years between undergrad and grad school. I didn't know right away that I wanted to get a PhD, but a series of other jobs, I kind of learned what I didn't want to do. And so I went back for my master's, and that was a wonderful experience, and that kind of sealed the deal. I was like, okay, I'm going to move on for my PhD. And when I was finishing up my PhD in Cincinnati and looking at job ads, I saw an ad in MLA for a visiting position at Georgetown College. I thought, oh, what's that? And I emailed Dr. Allen and said, hi, I've almost got my PhD. I'm very interested, but where are you? Am I going to be able to drive from Cincinnati? And she said, yeah, it's about an hour away. So I did my visiting year, and similar to Susan's experience, when I drove down on a July day to interview with Dr. Allen and Barbara Birch, it was a beautiful day. I stepped out of the car and I looked around at the campus, and everything was in bloom and the sun was shining, and it was impossibly picturesque and lovely. And I thought, this could be a good thing. And that was about 16 years ago. So.
Yeah. Macy.
My background's a little different. As I said, my father was a Lebanese immigrant, came over at age 14, and then went back, married my mother, and brought her back. And so neither one of my parents actually were college graduates, and but we knew we were going to college. I mean, they really valued education, and it was definitely something I was going to do. And I guess was trained for that. And then when I stepped onto the campus at the American University of Beirut, I knew I was at home. Academia has always been part of my life. And but I wanted to be a clinical psychologist or a counseling psychologist. So naturally, I got my master's degree in counseling psych and needed money. So I went to Michigan and worked at the school for 2 years and enjoyed it, but realized that I wasn't growing in my field. So I decided to come back to UK and just take courses in areas that I felt I was deficient. And while I was there that year, Georgetown College needed a psych teacher. And so I thought, well, why not? And I applied for it and thought I'd stay here 2 years and go back into the clinical field. And that's the end. That's all she wrote, because I stayed, and there's something about the students and the academia, the colleagues you have, the total academic atmosphere just enticed me. And I enjoyed every moment of my teaching there. I can honestly say I never minded going to work because it was something I wanted to do. And then I had to retire early because of the illnesses in the family. But I started a counseling center because I was doing the counseling on campus and I wanted it to continue. And I knew they'd replace me as a faculty member, but I needed them to have somebody there to do counseling. So I started and stayed on for a while to supervise because they needed my license, Kentucky license to practice. And that's it. I'm still here.
All right. Yay. Mark, you get to wrap us up here.
Very good. After I finished my PhD at University of Kentucky, I stayed on there and worked on pathogenic fungi. And in that department was the husband of Dr. Jerry Shaw from the psychology department, and Dr. John Shaw, who is a well-known plant virologist. And he told me that there was an opening at Georgetown College. And so I came up here and I met with Dr. Tom C. and Dr. Dwight Lindsay, and found out what wonderful people they were. And I ended up being hired by them. And then I was here for 33 wonderful years, and in the biology department, which is just such a strong department, and I enjoyed every minute of it, and I miss it. But thank you.
I'm going to switch gears a little bit, and I'm going to ask you this question, which is, what do you consider to be your greatest success during your time so far, if you're a current faculty member, or in retrospect, if you are now retired? What do you consider to be your greatest success during your time at Georgetown? I'm going to start this one with John. And he's going to have to unmute again.
Did you say with me? Okay.
With John. Go for it.
Well, that's a hard question to answer. Obviously, I think my greatest successes revolve around students, which everybody is going to say, because that's what you look for. But I read an old trite phrase, the first time I had seen it early in my career, that said that a student is not a vessel to be filled up, but a light to be turned on. And I added thinking to that to say, my part of that will be to help get the light turned on and then get the hell out of their way and just not try and hold them back. So that's kind of what I did. And I think my greatest enjoyment and my greatest success overall was watching that light come on and seeing them turn from freshmen that are, having lots of fun on campus and not a lot of direction and whatnot. But by the time they'd been there 4 years, they were still having a lot of fun on campus, but were had a direction they were going and a good way to get there. And I thought had prepared themselves well enough that they were going to happen, and then come back 10 years later, find out I was right, that they were good. So.
Wonderful. Kristen, I'm going to let you go next.
Oh, gosh. Well, certainly what makes Georgetown very special and unique is the close rapport we have among faculty and students. Our small class size makes that possible. Small class sizes, individual classes, and having the same students majors show up in several classes of yours throughout the few years, so you can establish nice relationships, kind of follow their trajectory, write the letters of recommendation, find out what grad schools they're getting into, or other endeavors that they're succeeding in. And that's all really wonderful. And I might point specifically to the opportunity some years ago to develop new courses in African American literature and Native American literature, which became part of our regular rotation in the English department. And I was thrilled to see them and continue to see those classes fill up with students from all across campus in all different disciplines. I think it's made an impact among some of our students and sort of turned on a light that they might not have even known was available to them in all kinds of ways, and sparked an interest in reading, writing, or other important issues that they became interested in and involved in. And so that's yet another thing that I've enjoyed about Georgetown College is the freedom that we have to follow our passions and develop courses and invite students into them and see how that goes.
Macy, what do you think is your greatest success during your time?
Talking to me?
Yes.
Okay. I don't, it'd be hard to say because your greatest successes are your students who succeed. And I've seen that when I've gone to Kentucky Psych Association meeting and sat with my students. That's a great success for me and very, very proud of them. And of course, I'm proud of the fact that we started a counseling center for a small college. We had, I haven't been in touch with them lately, but it was a very successful center. We got practicum, doctoral practicum students from Spalding, UK, and both to come and do their practice at our school. And that was such a great contribution to the college to have them there. And I think that has been a success. But as I said, our students are the way we measure our success, I think.
I don't think there's any doubt that that's the way all of us are going to feel.
Yeah.
I'm going to hand this over to Mark next.
I agree with what others have said, and especially in the science division, and I know John would agree with me on this, that we've had so many students go on into health careers, medicine, nursing, pharmacy, and I think this last year with the pandemic, I have kept in contact with many students, and the challenges they faced this last year. I think the college can be extremely proud of the work that they have done, and especially nurses. And I am very proud of the fact that we did have the dual degree nursing program. We still do, and that was so successful. And we've sent so many students to the University of Kentucky nursing over the years, and also many students have graduated from Georgetown, then gone to nursing school at various institutions. So I think that's been a real thing of pride for the college, is our students going on into healthcare careers.
Yes, no doubt about that. I know that a lot of people will always reference the strength of that education in the biology and sciences in general when it comes to their future success. It's been amazing, but also in other areas. Susan, you want to talk about what you consider to be your greatest success?
I think we have incredible students, but we also have students that run the gamut of challenges. And so I think while I'm incredibly proud of every single one of my students, the students who come in and need a little extra attention and a little extra encouragement, when they succeed, when they walk across the stage of graduation, that's a real testament, I think, for our department and what we do. I have one particular student who walked into my office as a junior, and he sat down. He said, "I think I'm going to change my major to communication because it's the easiest." I said, "Sit down and let me explain why that's not what you should say to your new advisor." And when he walked across campus to graduate, which was, we weren't so certain that was going to happen at some points. When he graduated, I knew that work was meaningful, that we did a good job there.
Wonderful, wonderful. Lindsay.
Okay, get myself unmuted. I'm very much like everybody else. I think I've always used the analogy that John used. I loved seeing that light bulb go off in the middle of a Western Civ class of all places. It was fun to teach freshmen because they weren't jaded yet. They didn't know it all, and they realized that. But I sat here and thought about them by name. It didn't happen often enough, but it happened often enough to be very inspiring, I think. And the ability to work with small groups of students where you could see when a student was mulling an idea out there in that class, working with kids on honors projects and seeing them have to take a bigger project and break it apart and put it back together, all against a time frame that was not their friend necessarily. And then of course the Oxford program, the tutorials where you could really, I think of one student who came in, he was pretty sloppy. And I applied my 9.5 where it would do the best good. And, he got serious very quickly and turned out to be a tremendous student. He had it in him. He just had never been forced to use it. And that one-on-one didn't let him hide. And those are the kind of successes that I've enjoyed the most. I have to say as well, I thought back to a friend and colleague and that you will know, and some of the others, Fred Hood, who could be quite irascible at times, as we all know, but he convinced me that I could write for publication, and I would have never done it without him. And yet, with all the blood, sweat, and tears that I've put into the things that I've written, that's an accomplishment that I'm pretty pleased with too. I made my only C at Georgetown College in an English composition class, by the way. So
we'll try not to be proud of that. Just that whole idea.
Well, it was by another great teacher though, Janet Lucas.
Janet, yes.
Who I, came to love and admire. Yes. Yeah, it was in freshman comp. Yeah.
Oh my goodness. Well, it goes to show the impact, I guess, that that can happen, not necessarily always through the best grades, but just as much through the not so good grades.
The grade was deserved.
Yep. Well, there you go. Guy, you get to finish this up on this question.
Yeah, that's a difficult question. And I guess we can go back to our relations with our students. And we live in an age of distraction, and politics can be alienating. And sometimes it's difficult to reach out to our students and to make them realize the importance of the big themes out there, right? That we need them to go out in the world and give their contribution. So when we realize that we do it, it's really humbling. I had a student, for instance, in her graduation day, she came to me and she said, I really didn't know which major I want to pursue when I came here. I just had one certainty in my life, which was that I did not want to do political science. That was my only certainty. And then I took your class in human rights, and right there I decided to have political science as my major. And then she went on to go to law school, and now she's, pursuing a career in that area, right? And so one thing that I'm particularly proud of was to have participated in a field trip that we organized in November 2019 to Alabama with some faculty, John Hinkle, Roger Ward, Robbie Barber, and we took freshman students, and we went to Birmingham and Montgomery, and we visit sites related to the civil rights movement. And that was a profound experience to our students. And we did a project on that in which we recorded a video and in which they gave their testimony about that trip. And the feedback that we had from them was that they loved that. That changed their lives. That allowed them to sort of see the world with other eyes. And that's what I think as a faculty, we look for, at least in my case, to be able to help our students find that passion, that sense of urgency in giving their contribution to the world. And sometimes we succeed in doing this, and that's when I feel successful, I guess.
Wonderful. Actually, that brings me to my next question is you had these successes, and part of it has to come from some sense of what your teaching philosophy is. And I'm going to ask you, how do you go about creating this kind of impact through your faculty role? What is it that you do that makes it possible for you to have that level of impact? This can be an inspiration for future teachers, we can hope. And just think about how did you create the impact that you've had through your faculty role? And I'm going to start with Susan.
I think I'm honest with my students very early on about my own personal experience and the challenges that I had. I went to college without having any desire really to be in college. And I think a lot of our students do. They've been told their whole lives that they're going to college, but they don't have any idea of why. And so when I say that to them, that I had that experience and that I was on academic probation as an undergraduate and that I found a thing that I was passionate about and found a way forward, that they recognize that they can do that too. And so it's very important to me to give them compassion and to understand where they are in their place in their lives as 18, 19, 20-year-olds, but also to know that when do we need to hold them accountable and when do we need to give them grace. So I think that that's probably the hardest struggle for me, is that balance. But I also think that that's really what helps my students to feel like they can be successful.
I'll move it over next to Mark. How did you create the impact that you've had through your faculty role?
I think having classes with hands-on labs really helps students in their sense of discovery, and especially labs that are rather open-ended, so that there might not be a definite answer. And then other labs where they'd have bacteria to identify unknowns, and I know chemistry does unknowns also, and they'd have to run all kinds of staining techniques and other tests to determine and figure out what the bacterium their unknown is. And I think things that are challenging like that really helps build self-esteem. And so I think that's something in the sciences that Georgetown does well.
Excellent. Macy, what about for you?
My policy when I was on campus was having an open door. If I was in the office, unless I was having a private session, students were welcome to come in and talk anytime they wanted to. We talked about all kinds of things. But I think the thing I tried to do most was encourage them to think critically. Psychology is a changing discipline in the sense that new research comes out every day that changes your mind about what's actually happening in the mind and how to impact people. And I encourage students to question me. I tell them, just because I say it doesn't mean it's necessarily really true. It might change tomorrow. So think, does this make sense to you? Could you make this better? Can you come up with a theory that would be better? And I encourage them when they read what they read in the books to do the same thing, because I think current history is showing we need critical thinking. We need people who think for themselves and can discern what's true and what's not true. And I hope that was the major impact I had on them, because they will always be learners, but they need to sift through what they read and decide what is worth keeping.
Lindsay, I know enough about your teaching to know that you'd probably agree with Macy. What would you think?
Yeah, I do agree with her. And I think it's also important never to underestimate the intelligence of your students. I mean, they may not act like at times they're not very intelligent, but there's always more there than they're going to give you off the bat. you dig in, and I think the personal, the personal touch is so important. If you can get them aside and talk to them one-on-one or in small groups like Macy was talking about. And it's also important to recognize, I think, the power we have as a faculty as a whole. We require our students to take a lot of different classes, a lot of different disciplines. And you know, we can hammer away at the same critical thinking process in so many of those classes. I know the sciences do it, but we all have to know that it goes on in other disciplines as well as our own, and eventually that'll get through. Well, and again, I need to hush, but one of the greatest experiences I had was a kid who put off Western Civ until he was a senior. And he came in and I think realized in the process of that class how much he actually knew. He had gotten it from other disciplines and could apply it to the evolution of history. And it was fun to watch him realize what he had become in the course of 4 years.
That's amazing. Guy, I'm going to have you go next. How do you create impact through your faculty role?
I think I sort of go between two polar opposites there. On the one hand, I think I follow the same strategy of Susan, trying to be honest and sort of telling about my own failures, right? And in that process, also telling them, at least in social science and politics, that oftentimes there's no absolute correct answer. And one of the reasons that I decided to become a professor is because I love having those deep conversations, even when I was a kid. And I told them, I learn a lot from you. And to be honest, I don't know much more than you do. And the more I study, the less I really know. So, and sometimes you might give me an answer that's completely off mark in terms of what we are discussing about. And that's awesome, because that takes us to a completely different place, right? So I try to encourage them to just come out and bring what they have, because I love to learn from them. On the other hand, I tell them, listen, I joke saying that a lot of my students would perhaps I am in the only profession in the world in which many of my clients would love me to do a bad job, right? Meaning, if I just came to class and brought cookies to them and, you know, talked about whatever, watched some movies, they would love me, right? But I tell them, listen, you, by the mere fact that you're here sitting in the classroom, it means that you are part of the 1% of the global population with access to higher education. That means a lot of power, and it also means a lot of responsibility. Besides, there were a lot of sacrifices in your life, your family's lives, for you to be here. And I take this seriously. So yes, I will make you work. And, you know, and because that's the deal, right? So, but let's do it in a fun way, in a relaxed way, in a respectful way. And you have much more to bring to the table than you believe you do. And those students who take on that challenge, I think that they have fun and they end up taking several of my classes. Some of my students joke with me saying that I should have, in political science, we should have a minor in Dr. Silva. Yeah, that's how I try to that balance between being relaxed and, but also telling them no, that, you know, we have to work.
John, how would you add to that? Oh, you just muted yourself.
Okay, I'm not a technician. With Lindsay and Macy, I agree wholeheartedly with the idea of having students stop to think about what they're doing, and rather than just trying to assimilate what's put in front of them necessarily. And I had two examples that I thought I would share. One came out of a junior senior seminar with really strong students in it. And I was watching them as I was talking, and they are just furiously writing down everything I say. So then I went into this discussion about a specific type of molecules they hadn't heard of. It says its bonding is in the shape of a butterfly. And for that reason, it's called butterflyane. And then I went on to talk about the properties of that stuff and some really ludicrous properties. And after about 5 minutes, I stopped and I said, guys, look at me. I'll look up. I said, read what you've written and how silly it is. I said, you're listening and writing, but you're not hearing. The other example, and they all got a kick out of that, but I think they took the message. The other example was, I think in every freshman class I ever had, I had one phrase that I always used, and I waited for the first test to use it, because I would invariably get the question when somebody had missed something, Dr. Blackburn, you didn't tell us that. And I said, no, you're right. But I gave you 3 or 4 things that would let you figure it out from the information in the question. And I said, a parrot or mynah bird can learn to repeat phrases, but parrots and mynah birds can't get college degrees. So you're here, whatever major you go into across the board, whether it's sciences, whether it's liberal, whether it's social sciences, whether it's fine arts, one of the main things you learn is problem-solving techniques, how to collect information, how to put it together, and how to make intelligent decisions. And it's taught in different ways in those different disciplines, but you would use exactly the same situations, problem-solving techniques. If you were a personnel manager in a business looking to hire a new person, as you were in a lab, and you're trying to find a new substance that's going to be something you need. And I firmly believe that. I think that you all basically taught problem-solving techniques and how to apply that to your discipline. And the really good students that come out of any area are the really good problem solvers. So that's what I tried to work on in my classes.
And Kristen, you get to go next.
Sure. Well, what I have to say is kind of an amalgam of what so many others have put so well. I think it starts with a good, comfortable classroom atmosphere where people feel welcome, that their voices will be heard, and like Guy, try to have a good mix between, getting across the idea that this is an intellectual space for academic rigor and serious work, but it's also comfortable, and we can talk and have conversations and be human beings with each other. And it runs the gamut from first-year writing classes, which invite a lot of quite personal writing. And so I think once students begin to understand that they do have their own voice, they can express their ideas, words can unfold in a beautiful way to help them find out who they are and learn about the world around them, and that their voice will be respected in the class. And with literature classes, as so many others have said about interdisciplinarity, I love it and I encourage it when students bring their own particular interests into discussions of literature. The psychology majors always have incredible things to contribute to discussions of the literature that we read. The science majors, everybody has their own particular interests. And so we're all going to read the same passage, the same novel, the same poem, but we're going to get something a little bit different out of it. And enjoying those conversations and inviting everybody in. So I guess what I'm trying to say is validating student voices, validating different perspectives, and confirming that they are welcomed in the classroom and that they will be nurtured there.
Wonderful. Yeah. Okay, that was all very inspiring, I think, from all of you. I have one last question here that is going to be a really good question, but we're getting a little short on time, so I'm going to have to ask you to be concise as much as possible. But here's the question. This is a really good question, which is, what is your favorite story from your time as a faculty member at Georgetown College? And so we need the good tight story structure, but I want to hear, what is your favorite story from your time as a faculty member here? And I'm going to start with John Blackburn.
Thanks a lot. I saw this and I gave it a lot of thought. And I'm not sure I could come up with one. I think all of my favorite stories revolve around something where a student expected something to happen and something else happened. And that happened in labs. It happened on trips. It happened when we would be in discussions with discussion groups. But you know, one thing, we'd studied hypothermia in a camping and survival in winter class that I taught in the interterm, and somebody's canoe turned over, and it actually snowed 3 inches between the time we put into the river and the time the first canoe turned over. And when you've got to get out of the river and change your clothes and everybody's around, it's a learning experience. And the students of one sex made a ring. Well, the first thing he did, everybody collected dry firewood because we learned how to do that in a situation like that. Learned to start it with Coleman lighter fluid and get a real quick fire going real quick. Then you make a ring, you change your clothes inside that ring, and there's another ring over here, and your partner's changing his clothes over here. And when students come back that were in that class, that's the thing they remember.
Oh yeah, they would certainly remember that one.
You know,
Guy, what about for you?
All right, we talk a lot about our relationships with our students, right? How we know about them, but they also know about us. So in class one day, I just told them, you know, I just got a new house and my wife and I are thinking about having a puppy. And I had these 4 female students who were great students, and they were several of my classes. And they said, yeah, you should get one. You know, I told them that I wanted to have a puppy from a shelter. And this one student made her mission to find me that puppy. And she would email me even during summer with links to shelters. And then I end up finding myself visiting a lot of shelters, right? But I told them, listen, I have a problem. I can't get a puppy because I have to teach. My wife also works, so I can't leave the puppy at home. And they said, no, you get your puppy and we will take care of your puppy when you come to campus and teach. And sure enough, I eventually got the puppy because of them. They found me one. And I brought the puppy to campus, and they would take care of the puppy while I was teaching. And one of the students made her mom to drive about 2 hours, bringing their puppy so the puppies could be playing while I was teaching. And the mom was happy about it. Like, okay, all right then. So that shows the type of relationship that we truly develop with our students at Georgetown College. And to me, this is a unique thing. I have never had this type of close relationship with our students. And to this day, except for the pandemics now, we couldn't do it for a while, but we usually go out and have dinner all together. Yeah, that's the story.
I love that. I love that. I need to meet your puppy. I guess I'll go next to Mark.
Well, I was lecturing one day in microbiology, and I had a long sleeve shirt on, and I felt something up my sleeve, my left sleeve. So I undid the button around my wrist, stuck my hand up my sleeve, and then I pulled out a sock. And so if you ever lose a sock in the dryer, you know, that might be a place to look. But after that, it took a while to get the class back on track. But
okay, I'm going to guess there are a lot of people who do remember that story too, who were the people in that class.
That's right.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Oh my. Susan, what about for you?
Well, we are currently, the department is now up on the first floor of Anderson, but for several years we were downstairs in the garden level, and all 5 of our offices were down at one end of the hallway, and we like each other. Each of us that teaches in our department, we like to spend time together, and our students like us. And so I don't have any one specific memory, but just afternoons sitting in the office with 5, 6, 7 students and all of the faculty members and laughing. And at one point, I remember Dr. Luckadoo had to close her office door because we were laughing loud enough that she couldn't get any work done. And just the camaraderie that our students have with each other and that we have with each other as colleagues, and it's incomparable. So
Macy, what's your favorite story?
I agree with her because I was in the basement level of Anderson Hall, and that happened a lot, and that made it fun to be there. But my favorite story is when a student showed up at my door with a whole bag of apples, looked at me, said, "I figured one wouldn't do it." And that was, I had many incidences of that kind of nature, but that one I remember so well.
That's a great use of you just having the props there with you. That's wonderful. Kristen, what about for you?
Well, the days I teach Virginia Woolf, I like to bring my Virginia Woolf doll,
Mhm.
because doesn't everybody have a doll of their favorite author, Dr. Allen, for
Yes,
instance?
maybe.
And,
two.
And a lot of students are afraid of dolls, so it traumatizes them. So that's always entertaining. And then one day I set her on a table in Cook, and by the end of class, she had done like a 90-degree turn by herself on a table. So either the doll is haunted or Cook 113 is haunted. I'm not sure which. So we decided we needed to move buildings. So that was kind of fun.
If you enjoy a haunting, yes. And now I had to leave the last word here for Lindsay. You're gonna have to unmute yourself. There
There
you
we
go.
go. I got it. Oh, there are just so many, Rosemary.
I know.
Over the years, I think the most lasting one, and some of you will remember this young lady. I was teaching a recent American history class, 1945 to the present, and you obviously get into civil rights. And we had a student who was the daughter of an Army sergeant from Shelbyville, Kentucky, and a Danish woman where he had been stationed. She is back in Denmark to this day practicing law. But she came up to me one day and said, "I want my time." And I thought, okay, you deserve your time. And about a week later, she says, "I'm ready when you are." And I worked her into the schedule. And she gave the most meaningful talk, I wish I had it on tape, of what it's like to live in two worlds racially. And how she mentioned, unfortunately, that the registrar had automatically put her in the black category. She says, "I'm half white." And that's a part of what I remember. But I had about 20 students in that class, one of the biggest that I'd ever taught on the upper division level. And they were, I mean, you could hear a pin drop. I mean, it was one of the most moving testimonies of anything I've ever heard in a classroom. Far better. And I've always said that I didn't teach that class. I just got them going and they taught it themselves. And that was the classic example of that. I've talked to her once since she went back to Denmark, but it just stays in my mind. I got a better education, I suspect, than she did out of that class.
I remember that student too. I had her as well. Just fabulous. Yep. Very memorable. Well, thank you to all of you, all of our panelists here for everything that you've done. But we have one last thing we want to ask you, which is, why should we all support Georgetown College today? Okay. And I'm going to start with Susan.
I think that we should support Georgetown College because of the experience that each of us have had. And the students who are here now deserve the opportunity. The students who are coming in the future deserve the opportunity to make the same sort of memories and to build the same types of relationships. And so supporting Georgetown just makes sure that they get to do that in the future.
Macy, what would be your reason to support Georgetown College?
Well, I've always thought you need to give back. You got something, you should give back something. And that's the way you perpetuate the system. Those who graduate give back so that those who follow will also receive the benefits of the system. And I really believe that we need to replenish the well. And we've been shown what a great thing it's been to be educated and to be in your discipline, enjoy it. So why shouldn't we encourage other people to go the same way and have the same benefits?
Lindsay.
For me, I had to ask myself this question because, as some of you know, I was not terribly fond of one of our presidents a few back. I still am not, but that's beside the point. But I was sitting the night before homecoming with it. I'd been invited to a party by a fraternity of which I was not a member, but they asked me to come, and I was sitting there talking to people, students. And it suddenly dawned on me, this is what Georgetown's about. It's not all the frustrations. And, I had my position abolished twice in my career. Once so we could play football, but I'm not bitter or anything. But it's about the friendships you form with fellow faculty. It's about the friendships you form with students that last a lifetime. I taught forever with Mark and Macy and John, and we share so much in common about so many things. But I think it's the people. It's that special bond. I don't know where else you find it, but in a small liberal arts college, perhaps.
Guy, what would your answer to that question be?
I guess I would merge what Macy and Susan said. I think that there is this issue of the community, those who profited from being here, giving back to the institution. So though the new students and students of the future will have the opportunity of experiencing what they had in the past. I think that Georgetown College has a long tradition. It has influenced and impacted the lives of so many people. And I think that it deserves to continue on. It deserves to be here for the next 100 to 100 years. And I think that, it makes a community for this to happen.
Kristen, what would you add?
Yes, I'll just echo what others have said in that the Georgetown College experience is truly special. And the bonds I see form between faculty and students and groups of students and within majors and across disciplines, across campus, they're just really wonderful. And the college needs everyone's support to keep doing what we're doing and doing it well, and provide everybody who walks through the Georgetown College experience with a lifetime of memories that they can hold and cherish. And I'm trying to adjust my screen so that the sun coming through doesn't completely bleach me out, but sorry about that. The blinds are closed. It's that time of day. So anyway, yes, our students deserve a really wonderful experience, and the college needs the resources in order to do that. So,
Mark, what would you add?
Yeah, thousands of folks over the years have made it possible for current and past students to graduate from Georgetown, and so that needs to be continued. Maybe as Macy said, pay it back, or maybe a better phrase would be pay it forward.
And then the last word to John Blackburn, our trustee, as well as our former faculty member.
I would have to say, I look at homecoming, and students come back from homecoming. I spend as much time as I can out on campus walking around, and I can't go very far without having a student come up and hug me, male or female, because that student considers me an important part of their life and having helped them. And I spent 5 years at Vanderbilt, 1 year on postdoc and 4 getting my degree. I sat in on a number of classes. I knew a lot of professors there. I don't know of any in the chemistry department that would have that happen at a homecoming. And I think that's Georgetown. I think that's why I would support Georgetown, because I believe in that. I believe in that kind of relationship. It's not because I can give them certain information, because they can get that information any place they want to go. It's how I give it and how I work with them outside of class and as persons. And that's what's here.
Well, I'll entirely agree. I'll add that anybody out there, your support of Georgetown College means that future students will continue to have life-changing experiences with wonderful professors such as these. And I do thank all of our panelists for joining us here on Tiger Talks. I thank you also for tuning in out there and joining and supporting us at Georgetown College. There are many ways to support the college, such as, number one, you can go online to gogc.me/give, or visit georgetowncollege.edu and look for the Give button to make your gift to the annual fund. That's number one. Number two, you can refer a student for admission. Send us your students. Send us these students who will be able to have that wonderful experience. Number three, you can support our athletics at home and on the road. Follow them at georgetowncollegeathletics.com. Number four, attend alumni events on the road or back here on campus. We really do want to see you at homecoming. We want to see you anytime we have the chance to touch base with our alumni and our friends. Number five, invite President Jones or other campus leaders to speak at your local service club, organization, school, or church. We'd be glad to be there for you. And number six, perhaps most important, pray for the college, our students, our faculty, and our leadership teams as we go into the future and hope to celebrate the 200th anniversary of Georgetown College, which is coming up before you know it. And that's all for this edition of Tiger Talks. Thank you for being here.